Hello, everyone. This is Dorothy Guerrero from Global Justice Now, and welcome to our interview series, Southern Perspective on the Coronavirus Pandemic. In this collection of interviews, we share how the continuing spread of COVID-19 virus is affecting countries in other regions. We feature views from representatives of progressive social movements and organizations that are collectively addressing the pandemic. The global challenge of the pandemic brought about unprecedented responses from governments. There is now varying degrees of restrictions of people's mobility and near cessation of economic activity in almost all countries today. In this interview, my focus is on Brazil, which recorded grim numbers of death cases recently. I will be talking to Cassia Bechara from the International Relations Collective of the Movimento dos Trabalhadores Sem Terra, or the Landless Workers Movement. And from now on, we will use the acronym MST. This important social movement was formed at the height of the struggle against the Brazilian military regime during the 70s, or the 1970s, and closely worked with the Partido Trabalhadores, or the New Workers' Party in Brazil. While Brazil's President Bolsonaro views the coronavirus as a mere flu, the MST is mobilizing and giving sensible health advice to rural people. As a political organization, it is also campaigning to defend the Sistema Único de Saúde, or Brazil's counterpart to the national health system, which is the world's largest public health system serving 200 million people in Brazil. Now, I would like to talk and discuss with Kasia how they are faring in this condition and how they are continuing their organizing in the midst of the pandemic. So, hello, Kasia. How are you?
Hello, Dorothy. Thank you very much for inviting MST. We are very happy to be able to talk a little bit about the situation in Brazil.
Yeah. So, can you tell us what is happening in Brazil? How are you coping with coronavirus, COVID-19, and while it's spreading in the population, and how are the different layers of society being affected?
Yes, as you must have been seeing in the news, the situation in Brazil is escalating very quickly. Today, we reached a number of over 300,000 infected in the country and almost 20,000 deaths by COVID-19. And in the last week, we've been having more than 800 deaths per day, which is like is growing very fast. The thing is that the researchers say that this number is very underreporting. The numbers must be much higher than that. What the researchers are saying is that it's maybe 10 or 15 times more than what's being the official numbers. So we've been living under a very strong health crisis in Brazil, as well as in most parts of the world. Uh, I could say that the disease is starting to spread through the poorest communities now in the last few weeks. So we may see a much higher growth of the infected, the numbers of the infected people in the next weeks, because the poorest areas are the areas where we don't have sanitation, where social isolation is very difficult because the houses are very near each other. There are a lot of people living in one room. Also, many places there is not even access to clean water. So with the disease spreading to the poorest communities and to the poorest areas of the big cities, we may have those numbers probably will grow much faster. Um, for now, the disease is still basically in the main cities of the country, right? But it's also spreading very quickly to the countryside, to the rural areas. So where also we have much less access to the health system in the rural areas. So what we see is that as long as the disease spreads to the poorest areas into the rural areas, those numbers of deaths may increase quite fast.
Mhm. Maybe for those who are not familiar with MST, can you tell us more about your organization? How is it organized? Where are you organizing? When we say it's a mass or it's a political movement, it's a mass social organization. Are you present in all the cities and areas, or is it mainly a rural organization?
Mhm. Yeah, MST is an organization that organizes the peasants to fight for agrarian reform, land distribution, and social transformation. So we are basically and mostly based in the rural areas, where we have what we call our liberated territories, which are agrarian reform territories that were conquered through the struggle for agrarian reform. So where the families live, and in those territories we have the schools are run by the communities. We have our own kind of health system. So it's in one sense, our members, our people are much more protected because they are within territory where we have much more control over those territories than the rest of the people. And we are most of us living in the rural areas. That's true. So this makes unique for us also the way we face the epidemic, because we can still work in the land, we can still produce, we can still grow our food, while most of the working class in Brazil are now in isolation, losing their jobs, or the informal workers are not being able to work. So we have a very unique situation for being a rural organization.
Yeah. Well, from what you describe, MST is doing a lot of vital work for people in Brazil. So before the crisis, our understanding is that there's already a big threat to how you organize because of the political condition in Brazil, where you have the government trying to repress your organization and trying to prevent you from doing what you normally do. So, and then now here comes COVID-19, which restrict people from organizing. So can you tell us what's the difference with the difficulty you're facing before COVID and now that there's COVID-19?
Well, I think that the biggest difference is that we lost our main tools of communication with the people, which are the streets. Like taking the streets are the main tool that we have to communicate with the general population of Brazil. And we lost that because we cannot go to the streets now. And we also lost our main tool of struggle, which is the mass mobilization and the mass organization. We are not being able to organize mass mobilization and impersonal meetings and so on. But especially because, as you know, and if I can use this word, we have a psychopath running this country. And the federal government is not only not doing anything to face corona pandemic in the country, but it's also doing a lot of damage, because the president is always mocking the pandemic, is mocking the policies of social isolation, saying that it's not necessary, that it's too much, that we need to take care of the economy. Right now, in the middle of the pandemic, we do not have a Minister of Health, because the last two ministers of health were sacked from the government because they didn't agree with the way that the president was dealing with the pandemic. So because of this whole situation, we've been focusing our actions during the pandemic into two main things: organizing our production in our territories to be able to produce for our families, but also to have an extra production for donation. So we are organizing a lot of solidarity actions that includes mainly donation of food produced in our territories. So far, since the beginning of the pandemic in Brazil, which is like almost 2 months, we have donated around 600 tons of food produced in our settlements to the people who are unemployed, to people in the poorest communities, to people who are living in the streets. And we are working a lot in other solidarity actions around the pandemic. So I could name some of them. One, with our experience with the health system that we have in our settlements, we have our own doctors who are graduated in Cuba and who are members of the organization and who work in the settlement. So all those doctors, what we call the caretakers, who are the comrades who work in the traditional medicine, herbal medicine. So we are organizing training for community health agents. So people from the poor communities who, of course, all those trainings are with the safety and hygienic measures, but they are trained in the basic health assistance, and they go to work in their communities.
That sounds amazing.
Sorry?
Amazing that that sounds amazing that you're continuing to do this, and it really like you are running your own territory, you're producing your own food, you have your own doctors giving advice to rural people, and that although there are difficulties that we could imagine in organizing, you are simply continuing doing what you do best, which is organizing.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious. While it seems that MST is quite successful in overcoming the limits imposed by these regulations imposed by the government, how are the other organizations faring on that? Your allies and your partners in other sectors. How is the social movement continuing to organize in Brazil at this period?
Yeah, I think, of course, it's been a very difficult time for organizing in all levels. But all the other organizations, unions, other people's movements, they're also joining together with us into organizing solidarity actions. And I think the solidarity actions are being the way that us, the social movements, the workers' organizations are being able to organize and to dialogue with the population. So many of those actions that I spoke about, they were launched by MST, but they are now joined by many other organizations. Also, we've been in the political side, we've been working a lot online with several meetings online, and we have launched together with probably, I would say 90% of the social movements in Brazil joined to launch what we are calling emergency platform to face COVID-19 and the economic crisis in Brazil. So it's a political platform of what to do during this crisis. So it covers topics such as public health, how to improve the public health, how to improve the access to food for the poorest parts of the population. So we've been working together on this emergency platform and trying to implement whatever is possible for us to implement as social movements. But it's also a platform for us to put pressure over state governments, since the federal government is like not possible to dialogue with.
Yeah. So what is unique with MST is that it has, and also from what you're saying now, is that it has a very explicit. It is a class movement. You put that in your analysis, you put that in your strategy, that your members have a really defined class consciousness. So with this strategy and worldview, what do you see, or what kind of changes are you working on now, uh, that you wanted to see in the society after the pandemic? And is it possible, given the situation now, is it possible to push for those?
Mhm. Yeah, we've been analyzing that the pandemic brought to most of the world how neoliberal policies and capitalism are not capable of dealing with such a pandemic. So the whole discussion of the size of the state, or how much the state should intervene in the economics. Now, like, people know that if the state doesn't intervene during quarantine or during social isolation, people cannot survive. The whole discussion on privatization of public service, such as health, are also being much more debated, if the privatization is the best way or not. So what we can see is that the discussions around a post-capitalist model or alternative of society are being much more on the table right now. I think the pandemic really showed how much are the limits of capitalism and neoliberalism to give people a decent life during difficult periods. On the other hand, we understand that we need to start working on what we want right now, right? So the emergency platform is one of the instruments that we are working on together with other organizations. We also, on June 5th, we are going to launch an emergency plan for agrarian reform, in which we organize, like, what we need to do to give access of land to the workers. What do we need to do to be able to produce healthy food for all Brazilians? What do we need to do in terms of living conditions in the rural areas? So this is another thing. And I think those conditions of working on what we want as a post-capitalist model of society, we need to start working now.
I think, given your role in MST, in the International Relations Committee, this is a question that you can respond to best. What are your thoughts on internationalism, on building international platform, wherein global movements, the movements of movements that was built 2 decades ago, is there still a future for that? What do you see as possibilities for that?
I think there's not only a future, but it's a necessity of that. I think more and more there is a necessity of building an international coordination, in international platform of social movements and political organizations to be able to globally face what is now a global capitalism, right? We can, of course, our struggles, they are rooted in the local level, but we can only win in the international level. That's our understanding. As MST, I mean, we believe in internationalism since we were born 36 years ago. We helped organize the World Social Forum. We helped organize La Via Campesina International. We helped in the Americas, we helped organize ALBA movements. And now we've been working with several other organizations from around the world in what we are calling International People's Assembly, which is a new international platform of social movements, political organizations from all over the world, in which we can bring together efforts in facing capitalism. So the International People's Assembly now works in mainly three, uh, we call three arms. Uh, One is the political education. So we are organizing many international political education schools to uh, educate, discuss, debate together uh, with our militants. The other is the communication. We are building international tools of communication run by the social movements. And the third one is a research group, which is doing studies on the topics that are demanded by the internet, the social movements. So as MST, we have our international brigades, which are groups of militants of MST who give away their lives in Brazil for 2 years to go work with other social movements and other struggles in other places of the world. So we have a brigade in Haiti, which is still now working on the pandemic, working on producing food uh, during the pandemic in Haiti. We have a brigade in Venezuela, which is also working with the communes in the production of foods and seeds. And we have a brigade in Zambia, which is working in the African continent, contributing as much as we can with the struggles of the people of Africa. So we believe as MST that internationalism is not only a moral principle for us, but it's also a strategy of struggle.
That is truly inspiring, and I hope that we also imbibe that kind of thinking over here in the groups and organizations over here. So, Cassia, thank you very much for all this that you have shared with us, and more power to to MST, more power to all your initiatives there. Take care. Bye
Thank you
bye.
very much.